Hello, lovely beans. How you doing? So, bit of a lesson learned this morning, and that is don't record at 6 o'clock in the morning and forget to process your recordings for listening on the internet. So, apologies if you've already listened to the first one I did today, but it's just not the quality I like to bring to you, so much apologies for that one. I'm redoing it. So there's 2 episodes today, as I said, and I'm just re-uploading it, and huge apologies for that one. God, I feel so silly. I digress. So if you do enjoy my recordings when I don't fluff up like that, if you could drop a like or hit the notifications bell, leave a comment, let me know what you're thinking, and if you do really enjoy it, please share and subscribe. I am so embarrassed I can't even tell you. I say going, okay, got to keep my head down. I'm just going to record the rest of it. So, yeah, no, right, okay. So, may contain traces of magic. J.W. Wells and Co. Book 6, Chapter 10. Please excuse me. I'm so sorry. Right, okay. Chapter 10.
Excuse me, sir,
said the big male policeman.
but are you feeling all right?
Chris opened his eyes. He was sitting in the driver's seat of his car, and the policeman's head was poking through the open window. He was in a lay-by, beside a dual carriageway.
What?
Sorry. Yes.
Fine. Only you appear to have fallen asleep.
The policeman went on, looking at him carefully.
You do realise it's an offence to sleep in a lay-by, don't you?
Is it? Like he cared. He wasn't in Weymouth anymore. Sorry, I didn't know that, he gabbled. I was feeling a bit drowsy, and they say if you start feeling drowsy, pull over and rest, otherwise you could cause an accident, so... The policeman nodded slowly.
I shall have to ask you to take a breathalyser test, if you'd just like to step out of the vehicle.
Sure, yes, no problem. It was all he could do to not grin like an idiot. Fortunately, the policeman didn't seem to have noticed, and by the time he had passed the test and been given his lecture and promised faithfully not to let it happen ever again, he'd managed to get himself under control. And I woke up, Chris said to himself as he watched the police car drive away. And it had all been a dream. But it hadn't. He was sure of that. He had evidence, a trivial thing, the sort of thing only Poirot or Columbo would recognise for what it was. He'd only noticed it himself when he'd taken out his wallet to show the bogies his driving licence, but it was substantial enough to build an entire reality on. He sat for 10 minutes or so, watching the cars zoom past. 10 minutes of the hardest work he'd ever done. Fine, he said aloud. Then he got out his phone and made a call. He didn't ring Jill. Instead, he called the number on the card the Dayglow bloke had given him. Hi, he said. I've got your shirt.
What?
Pause.
Oh, it's you.
Yes, it's me. I expect you want it back.
Wouldn't mind.
The Dayglow bloke said.
No desperate hurry, though, or you could stick it in the post. Save you,
It's really no trouble. Chris reached out and touched the place on the windscreen where SatNav's rubber plunger had left a mark. Besides, you're coming to see me. Bring your electronic stuff, he added. Might as well do a thorough job. A moment, while that sank in.
They've been back.
Yes.
Where are you?
Chris laughed. Private joke, he explained. I'm about 3 miles past Junction 6 on the A980 northbound. There's a lay-by. The Dayglow bloke's name turned out to be Derek Bloom. He listened without interrupting while Chris explained. Then he said, You're sure? Chris held out his hand. Lying on his palm was a little wooden stick. Ah, Derek said. It couldn't be, well, you know, what he'd had earlier. Like, there's all sorts of junk in my coat pockets. Some of it's been there years. Chris shook his head. I hadn't had an ice cream for ages, he replied. I remember thinking that while I was in there. I don't actually like the stuff. Like, I can't stand beach holidays. He paused, then said, That's very important.
Is it? I think so. Feel free to disagree. After all, you're the professional.
Derek shrugged.
Take your word for it, he said. All right, so it wasn't a dream. And while you were there, you definitely saw a demon.
Yes.
No offence, but how can you be?
By way of reply, Chris handed him the sunglasses. Derek looked at them and whistled.
Fine workhouse of Vienna, about 1935,
he said, in a pleasingly awed voice.
Where did you get...
A kind of friend lent them to me, Chris replied. Derek handed them back.
All right, he said. You saw a demon. So what you're saying is, your wife's...
She's not my wife, Chris snapped. And no, I don't think she's a demon either. And it wasn't a dream, it was real.
Okay,
Derek said, in a where exactly is this leading sort of voice.
And she asked you the question, where is she?
Yes, Chris sighed, and put the sunglasses away.
The whole beach location must have been a PK86V, JWW Retail Timeout Instant Bank Holiday, he explained. It's just your basic metadimensional vortex stabilised in a temporal disruption field loaded onto a CT. It's not one of our best-selling lines. In fact, I think it's been discontinued. But I demonstrated one to a customer only a day or so ago, and when I went through my samples before I came out this morning, it'd gone. I'm guessing that was the one they used, but it could be one they bought somewhere over the counter. They must have hacked into it and reconfigured it to do all the stuff with the policemen and me being arrested and carted off to the Nick. In fact, I know they did, because when I woke up in this lay-by 40 minutes ago, I checked my watch and it said 8:45, just before being pulled over by the cops' business started. I'd heard the 8:30 news summary on the radio.
Derek nodded slowly.
All right, he said, with you so far. You're saying they tried to pull basically the same stunt as the last time at the Ettingate Retail Park?
Looks like it, doesn't it? Anyway, Chris went on. I thought you'd better know about it, so I called you. Oh, and I haven't got your shirt with me. It's at home. Drop by any evening after 7:30 and pick it up. Derek thought for a moment, then said,
So, why are they still after you? I thought the whole point was that they believed you knew something and then realised you didn't. Why go through the whole performance all over again?
That, Chris replied with feeling, is a fucking good question. Just as well you're here to figure out the answer. It's what I pay my taxes for, after all. Derek nodded.
I'll pass it on to Colonel Etienne Smith. She's taken charge of this case, you being her personal friend, so...
No, Chris said, surprising himself with the firmness of his voice. Don't do that. You think about it yourself. I have faith in you. You're clever. You have excellent taste in shirts. You think about it, and when you've thought, you call me, right?
I can't do that,
Derek replied indignantly.
That would be a direct breach of the chain of command. It would be...
Chris took the sunglasses from his pocket and held them out.
You might want, he said quietly, to borrow these.
For a moment, Derek stared at him as though he'd just sprouted feathers. Then he said,
Oh,
in a tiny little voice, and took the glasses.
You can give them back when you come round for the shirt. Right,
Derek said.
Yes, thanks.
He stared at the glasses in his hand, then put them in an inside pocket.
How did you...
Figure it out. Chris tried to look casual.
Oh, Jill and Karen used to be best friends at school. Karen, he repeated. My wife, only she's not.
To fill in the time, Chris did his usual rounds. Sold loads of stuff, hardly aware of what he was doing. BB-27 Kears and enough dried water to fill the Sea of Tranquility. Excuse me asking, he couldn't help saying though, but have you got any idea what they do with it? Funny, the girl replied. I was going to ask you that. After the last call, he killed an hour in a service station Burger King, drawing diagrams on the back of an envelope. He even used 3 different coloured pens. Then he drove to Jill's street and parked opposite the entrance to her block of flats. She was an hour and 10 minutes later than he thought she'd be. He saw her in his mirror, walking briskly up the street, carrier bag swinging from one hand, and he thought,
I used to be in love with that.
He could see it to himself quite easily, now that it was over. Even so, he was glad he'd lent the sunglasses to Derek. If he'd still had them, he wouldn't have been able to resist putting them on and looking at her, and he really didn't want to know what she'd look like through them. She must have recognised the car. She altered course, crossed the street, and came up to his door. He wound down the window and smiled at her. "Hi, Chris," she said, sounding vaguely apprehensive. "Were you waiting for me?"
Mm-hmm.
"Is anything the matter?"
Yes. You're not human. You're a demon.
Jill frowned. "Come in and have a cup of tea," she said. She'd always been tea rather than coffee, jacket potato rather than chips, salad rather than peas.
"Thanks,"
Chris said, and got out of the car to follow her. "How did you find out?" she said, her back to him as she unlocked her door.
Part intuition," he replied, "part deduction. What first started me thinking were—"
"Oh, stop trying to sound clever," Jill said. "Somebody must have told you."
"No way," he replied irritably. "I worked it out for myself. It was obvious, actually."
"Was it?"
"Yes, as soon as someone told me about the nice demon, the one who wants peace, I mean."
He took a deep breath and went on.
"That's you, isn't it?"
For a moment, Jill's face was completely blank. Then she nodded. "Quite right," she said. "Now, how did you guess?" Chris sighed and sat down on the nearest chair.
"Should have realised years ago, really," he said. "Well, not actually while we were still at school, because I'd never heard of demons back then, and I wouldn't have believed in them if someone had told me. But later, thinking about what happened that day in the girls' box."
He looked up at her and said,
"I'm right, aren't I?"
She nodded again. "I think so," she said. "Be more specific."
"You and Karen were in there when the demon attacked the other girl."
He paused, then went on.
"I'm guessing you could see the demon and Karen and the other girl couldn't. At any rate, you knew what was going on and it really upset you. That's what made you decide there had to be another way."
Jill was looking away, but she nodded once more.
"Being a demon hunter is the perfect cover, of course. You're heavily protected. I mean, no demon in its right mind's going to try and get at you of all people. You can keep track of everything that's going on, and if one of them does come after you, you can have it taken out straight away. They haven't got a clue where you are, but somehow they know you're connected to me. Maybe they can smell you on me. I don't know."
"Good guess," she interrupted quietly.
"Whatever. Anyway, that's why they've been after me and why they think I know where you are. I think you should have told me, though."
She shrugged. "Maybe I should."
"And that's why—"
This was acutely embarrassing, but for once in his life, Chris was prepared to endure the suffering.
"That's why why we never got together. I mean, it wasn't all that unthinkable. We've always been good friends, really got on, same sense of humour, all that stuff you get in the magazine quizzes. But you knew it was out of the question because you're not deep." Deep breath. "Not human. Pretty bloody fundamental, really."
"Quite," Jill said.
"And then when I heard about how you were planning to do away with needing to kill people, how your lot feed off emotion—"
It was all coming out so fluently now, like blood from a punctured vein.
"I suddenly realised 2 things, really. What I mean is, there's our sort of group of friends ever since school, and you're the one everybody's always come to with their problems, or when they're really happy, anytime they're really emotional. What do? They come to you and they talk about it, pour it all out in torrents, and you sit there looking all serious and sympathetic, nodding and saying, 'That's so terrible,' and 'I know,' and stuff. What you've really been doing all this time," he said,
with just a hint of anger,
"is lapping it up, food and drink to you, literally. You live on it, and I think," he went on, That all the time we all thought you were there for us, the only person we could talk to who would understand. Really, I think you were stirring away like mad, making trouble and melodrama, keeping us all living soap opera lives so we'd... He shrugged. Better than killing people, I guess. But it explains why sometimes when I see you, you're as thin as a rake, and then a week later you've put on pounds. And Karen and me... Definitely a raw edge to his voice, and he didn't care. You knew from the very start we weren't right for each other. We'd never ever be able to get along, but when she fancied me back in school, you egged her on, and then you led me on, and then gave me the brush off just exactly time, so I turned to Karen on the rebound, and I suppose you've been, well, snacking off the both of us ever since. Hardly snacking, Jill said quietly. More a four-course banquet with wine and cheese to follow. Fine, Chris snapped. Glad to have been of service. You have been, she said solemnly, and not just to me, not just to the human race either, she added. If you've heard about what I've been trying to do, you must see that it's the only hope for my lot and yours as well, and meanwhile, she shrugged, a girl's got to live. He looked at her, at the side of her head, since she was still facing away from him. I guess, he said heavily, and it's all been in a good cause, and it's not like I begrudge you. He covered his face with his hands and slowly massaged his closed eyelids with his fingertips. Suddenly he felt overwhelmingly tired. I can ask you if it was all just an act or whether you ever really liked me, or any of us, and you'll give me an answer and it'll all sound really convincing, but I don't think I'll be able to believe it. Your choice, she said, sad but reasonable voice. This hurts me more than it hurts you. Now, perhaps you can see why I never told anybody. Well, of course, you'd have blown your meal ticket. Chris hadn't quite meant it to come out as harshly as that. But since it had, he didn't really mind. Anger and disappointment, two very strong emotions on a bed of wild rice. Jill walked away from him until she was facing the window. She said, Well, there you go. You're quite right. And smart too, the way you figured it out. What are you going to do now? For a long moment, he didn't understand the question. If you mean, am I going to tell anybody? Of course not. They'd think I'd gone round the bend for a start. Our little secret, then? I suppose so, yes. And I wouldn't tell anyone even if I thought they'd listen. I mean, he added, and pushing the words out was like pulling his own teeth with pliers. I don't want the nasty demons to find you, do I? She nodded. Because it would mean the end of civilization as you know it. Partly that. Yes. Well, fine. Very public-spirited. And I'm sorry. Sorry, Chris echoed. One of those words that suddenly doesn't seem to mean anything. Yes. Sorry. We apologise for any inconvenience. Unfortunately, the survival of both of our species has had to take priority over your delicate bloody sensibilities. And while I think of it, Karen's too good for you, and you've always treated her like shit, and then you have the nerve to come whining to me about how you're not getting along when you should be waking up every morning thinking how lucky you are that you've got someone who put up with you. I know I couldn't have. Even if I had been human, I'd have bitten your head off in the first 3 days. Even as he felt the shock, a part of Chris was thinking, hurt, anger, misery. If she's not careful, she'll be as fat as a pig by this time tomorrow, or she must be starving to lay into me like this. Just as well, then, he said woodenly. Anyway, that's that cleared up. I'm glad we got it all straight at last. Good luck with your mission, or whatever you want to call it. Thank you. He stood up. His legs just about supported his weight. And if there's anything you can do to get the fucking demons off my case, it would be appreciated. Quite understand if you can't, but if you can, it would be nice. Chris didn't wait for an answer. She'd have to protect him now, because if they caught him again and asked him the same question, where is she,
This time he knew the answer, and of course he'd tell them. No heroism, no I'd rather die than talk. Damn it, they wouldn't even need to ask. He'd be squealing the information at them so loud he wouldn't be able to hear themselves think. And then they'd kill him, of course, but knowing that wouldn't make any difference. At least I'm honest with myself, he thought. And Jill, was that her real name? He had no idea what demons were called. Ashtorel and Bournemouth and stuff like that. But not Jill Etten Smith. Knew him well enough to have no illusions at all. If I were Jill, he thought suddenly, I'd have me killed. No question, but that she could do it. He could just imagine Derek or one of the other Deerglaw people quietly and efficiently putting him to sleep. Poison, or something that would look like a domestic accident, and the knowledge would die with him, and billions of lives would be saved, so that was all right. Just as well I'm not her then. I'd do it because I'm a coward. Just go to my liver and follow the yellow brick road. Whatever else she may be, Jill's no coward. And besides, if she thought I had to be got rid of, she'd have done it then and there, the way she always did her homework the moment she got in from school, rather than leaving it till the last minute like the rest of us. I'd never have left the flat alive. Now what? Chris thought as he walked slowly back to the car. So I solved the mystery all by myself. Dead clever, but you don't get a prize or even a blue Peter badge. Instead you lose your best friend, and the consolation prize you get to keep and take home with you is, well, the truth. The shining, all-transcending, most important thing there is, bloody truth. Men have fought for it, gone to the scaffold and the rack for it, laid waste whole continents for it. But when you actually think about it rationally, what fucking use is the truth anyway? Can't spend it, can't invest it in high-yield capital growth bonds, can't even have it mounted in a silver frame and hang it on the wall, so, oh, very well in its place, the ideal gift for the man who has everything, but on balance, he'd far rather have his friend and his life back. Thank you so terribly much, all the same. He drove home, and as he waited at some traffic lights, he thought, yes, but how did I figure it out? Got the right answer, true enough. But it's like maths. You've got to show you're working or you don't get the marks. There was something else, some little thing I noticed and then I knew, but I don't seem to be able to account for what it was. The lights changed, and as he pulled away, a movement at eye level caught his attention. The plastic hummingbird was back, swaying on its string from its mirror. Karen was, huge mega surprise, working late. Nothing in the fridge or freezer, so he rang the Indian takeaway across the street and ordered set menu A for one. If nobody else was going to reward him for solving the mystery, he would have to do it himself. Highly spiced food doesn't sit well on a delicate stomach already fairly comprehensively knotted up with stress. At some point in the early hours, Chris woke with a savage pain in his tummy. He rolled out of bed, being very careful not to disturb Karen, and scuttled for the toilet. Heroism, he thought. A bit of gut ache's enough to make me whimper like a baby. Chances of holding out under torture by razor-tusked fiends precisely nil. Not a hope in hell of going back to sleep, Chris slouched into the living room and sat on the sofa in the dark. What sort of measures, he couldn't help wondering, would Jill take to protect me, now that her life depended on it? Round-the-clock guards were out of the question. Karen wouldn't allow that. Deerglaw men in polo shirts cluttering up the furniture and making the rooms look untidy. He didn't pretend to know anything about anti-demon security, but of course he didn't have to. Jill did, and he could rely on her. The thought dropped into his mind like the apple clunking down on Newton's head. Right, it said. If Jill's the one who is to come, Angela couldn't have been. But she was a demon. The sunglasses proved that. So who the hell was she, and what? He squeaked out loud. A demon. A murderous inhuman killer, like the one that scragged poor Mr. Newsom, and he'd been sharing his car with the bugger for days. Why? 3 guesses. She'd been assigned to steer with him, waiting for him to let slip some clue that'd lead them to the one who was to come. And once he'd done that, Chris's stomach lurched, and this time it had nothing to do with ghee and chili powder. Presumably, then, it hadn't been an accident at all. Presumably, Jill's people had killed her, which was no bad thing, naturally, the only good demon and so forth. But even so, He thought of her wearing the Instaglammer cream, annoying him half to death with her incessant bloody prattling, her eyes shining with excitement because she just shifted an outer of BB-27 keys. Jill must have had her killed. He could pass that thought through his mind, make it sound like a chess move, White Queen takes Black Knight, but he couldn't bring himself to face what it actually meant, that someone he knew was dead because someone else he knew had taken a conscious, cold-blooded decision. Switzerland, Chris thought. Or he could pretend it hadn't happened and go to work tomorrow and sell stuff to people in shops until it was time to come home. Both of them methods of running away, the latter having the merit of being cheaper and more convenient. Trouble was, he wasn't the running away sort. Not because it was his duty to stand fast and see it through, whatever the hell it was, but because running away takes energy and causes disruption and fuss. He sighed. Pathetic. Maybe I should just leave, though, he mused. Karen and me. He thought about that, and about love, and the flat. There's no love here, he thought, just force of habit. We live here because we need somewhere to eat and sleep after a hard day's work. Either one of us will be pushed to cover the mortgage payments, but together we can more or less manage. That's about it, really. I think that maybe she did love me once, at school, probably, and a while after that, when I was still vaguely hoping that something might happen with Jill and me, and then Jill told me I was wasting my time. Now we know why. And there I was, rebounding about like a pool ball, and Karen... But that was a long time ago. No kids, thank God. We're not even married, so no divorce. Just sell the flat, pay off the mortgage and move on. Geneva, here I come. No. All right, then. Chris glanced at his watch. The glowing green dots told him it was 3 a.m. He could have guessed. Wasn't 3 in the morning when most voluntary unalivings happened. Won't do that. But if you're not prepared to sort out the mess, at least stop whining about it. All this and demons too. What a life. Chris turned a few things over in his mind and then thought, yes, that more or less covers everything except for the hummingbird. What the hell is all that about? And where did it come from? Whatever it was, it did appear to be on his side, like SatNav. SatNav. He hadn't thought about her for a while. It had been Jill who'd warned him off her, and now Jill was revealed as an unreliable witness powered by her own agenda, in which case SatNav was in the clear and he could trust her as he so very much wanted to. Except it hadn't been Jill, not to begin with. They'd warned all the reps about them at the sales conference, and then Ben Jarrow had told him what happened if you let them get under your skin. So it wasn't just Jill, and besides, he had no reason to believe that she'd lied to him about everything. On the other hand, Princess of the Fair, piggybacking into his head on a piece of music like a computer worm in an email. Chris sat up. SatNav had told him she was fighting for the one who was to come, helping her on her team. So if that was true, then presumably SatNav and Jill at least knew each other. Jill, on the other hand, had told him SatNav was a rogue, deranged, out to get him. She'd had SatNav taken away and locked up in a secure place. She'd been really stressed out when SatNav had escaped. Was all that an act? And if so, why? And SatNav hadn't been exactly positive about Jill either. A blind to keep him from guessing the truth. He could feel a headache coming on. All too difficult, he told himself. Also, none of my business, not anymore. His friendship with Jill was effectively over. SatNav was now just an empty box. Angela was dead. It was finished, so why drive himself crazy worrying about it? Pretend it never happened and carry on with his life. Simple as that. Chris swung his feet up onto the sofa, dragged the cushion under his head and closed his eyes. I will go to sleep. I will go to sleep. He forced a dozen sheep into existence and compelled them to jump over a dry stone wall. He was wide awake. A demon claw was stroking the lobe of his ear. Chris's eyes opened. He knew it was a demon, because in dreams intuition really works, but she didn't look like the others. She was dark-haired and fair-skinned, with soft mauve eyes and a long, delicately shaped face. Not just pretty, but beautiful. She had little silver ear studs shaped like butterflies and a nice tusk-free smile. "We apologise," she said, "for any inconvenience." Chris stared at her, then said,
"You woke me up?"
"No," she said. "Well, of course, different dimensions, different sides of the line. Falling asleep back home meant waking up here, just as terrifyingly hideous at home was disarmingly lovely here." He wondered vaguely if it was the same with, for example, good and evil.
"You put me to sleep,"
he corrected himself. "Yes."
"Thanks,"
Chris said.
"I was having trouble dropping off."
"Our pleasure," the demon said. Behind her, the room he'd just fallen asleep in, or rather, it was as though someone had drained all the colours out, leaving just plain black and white outlines, and then coloured them in again different shades, presumably using the demonic equivalent of Microsoft Paint. In which case, he was interested to discover that pale Wedgwood blue was the opposite of what Karen liked to call peach, but which he'd always thought of as simply off taramasalata. Well, you learn something new every day.
"Am I in trouble?"
he asked. She giggled. "Do you really want me to answer that?"
"Are you going to kill me?"
She looked mildly offended. "I'll pretend I didn't hear that."
"But I'm in trouble,"
he persisted. "You bet," she replied. "Quite apart from the whole triangle thing with your girlfriend and your female best friend, there's the fact that you're bored with your job and not really trying, which means that when your boss finds he needs to cut costs in about 9 months' time, you're definitely in the crosshairs for the sack. Also, you eat far too many pizzas and kebabs and rubbish, and you don't take any exercise, so you're just asking for trouble on that front. Also, in 8 years' time, you'll be 40, and your hair's just about to start getting thin on top. Sorry, but I won't be you for £1 million. Chris sighed. "Apart from that?" "You don't think that's enough to be going on with?"
"Apart from real-life trouble,"
he explained. "Oh, I see. You mean, why am I here and what are you going to do to me? Got you. Sorry, but we're not used to the way your lot think. It's sort of squiggly, not straight lines. Also, a bit like icebergs, 9/10 hidden. It's amazing you can live like that, and that's without the stuff."
"Stuff?"
She nodded vigorously. "The stuff, the things, material objects, possessions. Good heavens, if we had to contend with all that, we wouldn't be able to cope for 5 minutes. Take furniture, for instance, or electronics. How do you people do it?" Chris blinked.
"I don't know," he admitted. "Just sort of comes naturally, I guess."
"Amazing." She did look genuinely impressed. "We simply can't begin to understand. From our perspective, it's insane. For one thing, you only live, 90 years, but you cheerfully trade a huge slice of that in return for things. And the way you go about it, this concept of work, spending the majority of your waking hours doing things you don't like doing and mostly don't even understand, as an incredibly roundabout way of getting food, and don't get me started on food and eating. That's just plain weird. And all this stuff. Completely beyond us, really. We can't begin to understand. I mean, on our side of the line, inanimate objects don't even exist."
"She's very strange," Chris thought, "but curiously nice." "Are you really a demon?"
"Of course we are, silly. Don't you recognize us?" "Well, no. We guess you wouldn't, would you?"
"We've met before."
"Oh, yes. In that car park."
"What? The Ettingate retail?"
She winced. "Please don't use names," she said, and it was as though he'd just lit a cigarette in the middle of a busy restaurant. "You want to know, of course, but we don't have them here. They're bad for us. They pin us down. She looked very unhappy, so if you wouldn't mind.
Sorry,
he said. That's quite all right. Chris couldn't resist.
Is that really true? He asked. Things don't exist here.
She smiled indulgently. Perfectly true.
But what am I sitting on if there's no sofas or chairs?
She laughed. You have no weight to support, she replied. That's why we had to borrow your own surroundings. It's only here so you won't feel uncomfortable.
Oh,
was the only possible reply to that, followed by an awkward silence, during which she looked at him. Not menacingly, or hungrily. Curiously, if anything, in the way he'd seen crowds of Indian village children do in documentaries, happily staring at the camera.
Everything's different here, isn't it?
He said. She smiled. You could say that, she replied. Also, of course, the same. Like in a mirror, we suppose you could say. The same but round the other way. But that's so simplistic it's actively misleading.
Ah, right.
Chris tried to get his head round that. Failed, and asked,
What am I doing here?
We want to ask you a question, also to explain.
My God, he thought, the E word. Okay, he said, and then?
You can go home again.
You're not going to?
No. She moved slightly. Can we get you anything, by the way? Coffee, taste, tea sensation, the illusion of a donut?
No, thanks, I'm fine.
He hesitated, then went on.
You said something about explaining?
What? Oh, yes, so we did. Sorry, sidetracked. She settled herself comfortably on a footstool. He hadn't got one, but had always wanted one. Karen wouldn't let him have one, because it would have been clutter. Where would you like us to start? Good question. To which, at the beginning, probably wouldn't count as an acceptable answer. Either that, or he'd get a whole lot of guff about the Big Bang.
What exactly do people want from me?
She looked at him, with her head slightly on one side. We want to know where we can find the one who is to come, she said.
So you can stop her?
No. Made it sound like he'd said something crazy or stupid. No, of course not. So we can bring her home, of course.
Ah, Chris said. So you're the good guys. The ones who don't hold with the traditional ways.
She gave him a puzzled frown. Sorry, she said. We don't understand.
Someone told me.
He stopped, tried to pull himself together.
Isn't it the case that there are some of you who don't want to kill my lot anymore, and they'd rather try and find a way of harvesting our emotions, without us even knowing, to prevent an all-out war?
He'd lost her. Who told you that?
So
he stopped, unsure whether it'd count as a name.
My satellite navigation device, he said. Only, really, she's a princess of the Fae. At least, he added rather desperately, because she was giving him ever such a funny look. That's what she told me she was.
Well, she's quite right, she replied. Partly, anyhow. Actually, she's about 600 years behind the times, but the Fae are a bit like that. Not so hot on linear time. No, there was a... She paused, then said, Don't know whether you'd call it a lively debate or a civil war. Anyhow, it was hundreds of years ago, and what I suppose you'd call the good guys won. Which is why there's only a handful of demon attacks a year at your side, of course carried out by the tiny minority who refuse to give up the old ways. The vast majority of us live off sustainable emotion, like you just said. Well, that did make a kind of sense, Chris supposed. But it wasn't what SatNav had said, and it didn't really fit well with Jill's reaction either.
All right, he said. Let's say for argument's sake I believe you. So who's this one who is to come person?
She pulled a sad face. Just one of us, she said. Originally, she was the leader of the traditionalist faction. When they lost the debate, she went off to your side of the line in a huff, and I'm afraid the rest of us said that if that was how she felt, she might as well stay there and not bother coming back. But since then we've changed our minds. There's no point keeping the old wounds open. It's just divisive and spoils everything. So we're looking for her, to tell her it's all right to come home. That's all it is. But we're a very tightly knit community. It's probably hard for you to understand how much we mean to each other, because, no offence, your lot sometimes seemed like they care as much or more about stuff than about people. It's not like that here. We're all we've got, so naturally one of us going into self-imposed exile is quite a big deal. Also, we have an idea that she either doesn't know or doesn't believe that we want her to come home.
Bullshit,
Chris thought, but he looked at her and he found it pretty well impossible to believe that she was lying. All right, sucker for a pretty face, fair enough, and surely by now he'd learned not to trust the uncorroborated evidence of his eyes in any case. Wasn't like that, though. Either she was one hell of an actress or...
I'm sorry, he said, but I don't believe you.
Grin. Thought you mightn't. All right then, look at it this way. If our people really did have to kill in order to get what they needed, the murder rate on your side would be so colossal that no government would be able to keep a lid on it. I don't know if you're aware of it, but there's close on 1,000 of us. We'd be having to slaughter 2,500 of you every week just to keep Seoul together, and your people would notice that now, wouldn't they? Nastily valid point she'd got there, and it echoed what Chris had thought when she'd first claimed to be one of the nice demons. He could almost believe he was convinced.
You think I know where she is, right?
The one who is to come. That's right.
Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you, but I haven't the faintest idea. I don't know who she is, so how could I possibly...
Yes, you do, said quietly, pleasantly. Statement of a fact so obvious it hardly counted as a contradiction. She smiled at him.
No, I don't,
he said irritably, raising the aggravation level to mask the guilt that came with the lie.
If I knew, I'd tell you, now that you've explained, but...
We can smell her on you, she said.
Oh, you've been right about that then. Can you?
Oh, yes. Friendly nod. That's why we've been following you, trying to have a quiet word with you, only you would not.
A quiet word,
Chris repeated, and this time the anger wasn't synthetic at all.
You call what you did to me at the car park place a quiet word, do you?
A sad look. We're really sorry about that, she said. We misjudged you. We thought you were weak and cowardly, and that the easiest thing to do would be to scare it out of you. It was a really stupid thing to do, and we apologize unreservedly.
He thought, can't say fairer than that. On the other hand, if SatNav hadn't come along when she did and cut the seatbelt, you were going to kill me, he said.
We made threats to scare you. We're sorry.
You were going to kill me, he went on, because I told you I didn't know where she was, and you believed me. You could see I was telling the truth, so why the hell are you still bugging me now?
We did believe you. Yes, we were wrong.
So you're saying I'm a liar?
She shook her head, clearly in great distress. No, it's not like that. You see, we know you've been in contact with her. There's absolutely no way we could be wrong about that. But obviously you don't realize who or what she is, and why should you, after all? As far as we can tell, you're not the sort of person who ought to be involved at all. It must just be sheer accident. I know it sounds screwy.
Actually,
Chris said quietly.
The same idea had occurred to me.
Well, there you are. It's really unfortunate, and we do sincerely, genuinely apologise for the inconvenience, but you've got to see it from our point of view. You're the only lead we've got, and the thought that one of our people is over on your side of the line, alone, frightened, we've got no choice. We're sure you can see that. Will you help us? Please.
Something new here.
And he didn't think he was going to like it.
I just told you. I can't.
Yes, you can. She was looking at Chris straight in the eye, her lovely face shining with hope. It'd only take a minute. We promise it won't hurt or do you any harm, and it would mean so much to us. Of course, we'll understand if you say no, but we're sure that now you understand. You'll want to help us. Go on, please.
Jesus,
he thought. They terrify you, chase you, kidnap you, flush you down bogs, get at you in your sleep, and then they ask you nicely. The ruthlessness of the CIA, the persistence of a Jehovah's Witness, the face of an angel and the dumb charm of a cocker spaniel.
Help,
he tried to say, but his mouth refused. Please.
What would it involve? He croaked in, layman's terms.
Oh, nothing to it, she said quickly. We just make a tiny little hole in your head and take a peep inside your brain. It doesn't hurt. It's the sort of thing your doctors do every day, except they stick horrid bits of sharp metal in you and we just look.
Just look.
Confident nod. 100% non-invasive, and of course we'll be doing it on your side of the line, so you'll be asleep the whole time and won't feel a thing.
Not sure about that. What about this side of the...
Silly, she said, smiling. This side you haven't got a body, have you? So no body, no nasty old nerves and synapses to feel pain with. It'll be just like having a bright light shone on you. Chris kept still and quiet for 3 seconds or so. Then he said,
If that's all there is to it, drill a little hole and take a look. Why are you asking me? Why haven't you just held me down and got on and done it?
A look of horror crossed her face. Without your permission, we couldn't do that. It would be, well, we just couldn't. That's all.
You don't seem so very fussed about killing people.
Yes, we are. Any minute now. She'd burst into tears, only without the water, presumably. I told you, it's just a very few of us, the ones who cling to the old ways, and we want to stop that. It's why we want to bring them home, re-educate them, make them understand that it's wrong. That's why we need your help. Don't you see that? You won't just be helping us, you'll be saving the lives of your people as well. Because if we can bring home the one who is to come, the leader of the stick-in-the-mud traditionalists, it'll be a message to all the rest of them that there is another way and it can work.
No.
Chris had tried to keep the fear out of his voice, but it would insist on showing itself. If they got inside his head and saw what he knew about Jill being the one they were looking for, the demon woman had to be lying, because he knew the one who is to come was Jill, just as he knew she couldn't be the leader of the killing people is okay faction. What the hell was he thinking about, even listening to this creature?
No, sorry, can't be done. Wish I could help, but I've got this morbid fear of needles. Daren't even have flu jabs. That's why I never go away on holiday. Scared stiff of the inoculations. Besides, you're completely wrong. I have no idea who this person is you're looking for. I can promise you that. And drilling holes in my head is not going to change that. So you'd better forget all about it, all right? And now I think I'd like to wake up. Please?
He said, hopefully. But nothing happened. The demon woman hadn't moved. She wasn't crouching to pounce or anything, but she didn't need to. It wasn't as though he could jump out of a window and run for it. Not in a place where windows weren't even real. Might as well try and walk home from the moon. She was looking at him very keenly. Are you being completely honest with us? She said. It's relatively easy to pass off fear as anger.
You're doing it again, Chris shouted. You're calling me a liar.
She shrugged apologetically. Well, yes, she said.
Tough. What are you going to do about it?
Now she looked really sad. We could try appealing to your better nature.
Haven't got one. Now for crying out loud, someone wake me up.
She shook her head. We can't do that. We can put you to sleep, but not the other way round. It's like you can jump off a cliff, but you can't fly back up again. She paused, then added quietly, You could wake up if you really wanted to.
No,
If you really don't believe us, you'd wake up, she went on. We think you're protecting someone. At least that's how you see it. You think she needs to be protected from us, but it's not like that, honest. You know you can trust us. That's why you can't make yourself wake up. It's a basic defense mechanism, to defend humans from the Fae, but it only works if you know you're really in danger. And you're not, are you? Chris closed his eyes, but it didn't make any difference. He could see just as well with them shut.
All right,
he said.
Prove you're the nice guys. Prove it by letting me go.
A smile. We can't. Haven't you been listening? We can't wake you up. You've got to do it yourself. Was it his imagination? Or had she come closer? He hadn't seen her move, but she was bigger somehow, filling more of his field of view. Is it the drilling a hole that's bothering you? She said. Because there's another way of doing it. She drew the tip of her pink tongue across her top lip. It takes longer, but it doesn't hurt. Quite the reverse, actually. I'd have suggested it earlier, but I didn't want you getting the wrong idea about us. Definitely closer, and something about the light was having a soft filter effect. It wasn't Instaglamour cream that Angela had been using, he realised. It was just something these creatures could do, at will, like wiggling their ears. Chris turned his head and looked away, but that didn't make any difference either. She was there, just as close or closer, her lips slightly parted, just like in the films. Just one little kiss, she was murmuring. And that's not going to kill you, is it? Try to think of something else. Work. Think about filling out travel expense claims. Think about stock numbers, return vouchers, VAT invoices, green slips and yellow slips and blue slips, and there's a many a slip between cup and... It works both ways, she was saying. We can see inside your head, and you can see inside ours, and then you'll know we're telling the truth. We would not say that if we were lying, would we? After all, isn't that what a kiss should be all about? A meeting of minds, a melding of souls. And coffee breath and spit and teeth banging together.
I really do want to wake up now,
he whispered as her mouth opened and came towards him like the ramp of the cross-channel ferry. There was a hummingbird, and the beating of its wings made a whirring noise, a whirring sort of hammering noise, like the sound of an alarm going off. But that was no good, he told himself, because I'm not in the bedroom, I'm asleep on the sofa, so there's no alarm to save me, so it must be the beating of my heart or something equally useless. He felt his own mouth relax and start a pucker.
Ow! He squealed. What'd you do that for?
Chris's eyes opened. His cheek was stinging. Karen was standing over him, white with rage.
You hit me,
he said. Yes, she said, and hit him again, this time with a bit more risk to it. For God's sake, he protested, jumping up and shrinking away. What the hell are you hitting me for? You were talking in your sleep. Her voice was low and quiet, the sound of concentrated fury, and making little sighing noises and puckering up, and this time he managed to grab a cushion to use the shield. Was I? He said. I don't. Yes, you bloody well do. Karen barked at him. I saw you, you bastard. Oh, and while we're on the subject... She raised her hand, taking careful aim, and he tightened his grip on the corner of the cushion. Just who exactly is Angela? Well, is there a connection between the demon who sounded a little bit like SatNav and Angela and SatNav and Jill? How could there be? Okay, so I had to redo chapter 9. That'll definitely be back up again by now, by the time I've uploaded this one. This one's up, obviously, so that's 2 in 1 day. And yes, thank you for bearing with me. I'm doing my very, very best for you, as always, because I appreciate you, because you come and listen to all these chapters and you enjoy it and you interact and everything. So yes, tell me how your weekend is. Tell me if you've got any plans, any dinners that you like, anything you've seen that makes you giggle and laugh, and any jokes you've heard. Dad jokes are always a win. And yes, I enjoyed this one. It's going to be exciting. It's not too much longer left in the book. I think it's another 4 chapters or so. But yes, and then we'll go on to the next one, and then that'll be the whole series. Oh! So, as ever, if you enjoy listening and I don't do anything too much, please hit the like button, hit the notifications bell, share and subscribe. Any of those you would like would be very helpful to the channel and helps it all keep going. You must be so sick to death of hearing it, because I'm sick to death of saying it. But still, it's kind of like me smiling brightly at you going, go on in. Please, please, thank you. Thank you all so much for always indulging me and coming back for each chapter and joining in. And oh, you make my day every day. Every day that I can do this, you make my day. So, yes, I will see you in a couple of days. Take it easy. Get good rest. Eat good food. Have a good time. And yes, I'll see you in a couple of days. Oh my goodness, I need a new tune. Any suggestions? Give me some suggestions, that'll be awesome. Big hugs, big loves, and I'll catch you in a couple of days. Take it easy.